What's up guys, this is Professor Spawn. In this tutorial we are going to see that what are data types and what are the types of data Java supports. So you may use these types to declare the variables. You have seen that in the previous tutorial, right? So let's see like what types of data Java supports. So as you know from the fact that Java is a strongly typed language, it also makes Java safety and robust, right? So for every variable, there is a type. For every expression, it has a type, and every type is strictly defined, right? Second, all assignments, whether explicit or via parameter passing, which you will see in the in few tutorials, right, are checked, right? Its type are checked. And there is no automatic coercion or conversion of conflicted types, as you can see in other programming languages like Python. So if you want to define any variable, if you want to define any reference to a class or reference to a method, you need to define the type, right? So let's go and see what are the Java data types. So Java supports 8 primitive data types, which is byte, short, int, long, char, float, and double, and we'll see in detail in the subsequent slides. As Java is statically typed language, all variables must be defined before using, right? So this is like the most fundamental way of defining a variable. If you want to define a variable of speed, you need to define its type, and that type will be either int or long, byte or short. We'll see that integer data types. As well as the variable's data type determines the values a variable can store. What does this really mean is, if you define a variable as int, so it will store numeric values. If you define variable as float or double, it will store decimal values. If you define a variable as char, it will store characters, right? And if you define the characters like a string of characters, it will form a string. As well as, apart from this primitive types, Java also has a reference data types, which we will cover in the later tutorials, right? Let's go to the next slide. The first basic data type is Boolean. It's basically used for, when you want to evaluate whether the expression returns true or false, right? It stores two values only, either true or false. Let's say that you define a variable of, let's say, flag with the type as Boolean, then the default value of that flag will be always false, right? It specifies or it takes 1 bit of information, but to note that the Boolean data type size cannot be defined precisely because it is completely dependent on the virtual machine, right? So just like I have a laptop and the virtual machine I have, it's dependent on it, right? It's not precise. So, but then it takes 1 bit of information. So we'll see how do you define a Boolean in a program, and we will see that here. As we have seen the theoretical aspect of Boolean, we are going to use that into a code. So before that, I will refactor this, right? Inside this SRC folder, I'm going to create a package. To create a package, you just right click on this SRC, go to new tab and click on this package, and I'm going to name this as package.com, right? And again, I'm going to go back here and inside this com, again, I'm going to create a package of Java. So if you notice here, what I did here is inside this SRC folder, I have created a package. And again, inside this com package, I have again created a package named as Java. And inside this, I'm going to create a package of Boolean, right? Boolean Demo. Just remember this, just notice this error. It says that not a valid package name. It will not be possible to create a Java class inside. So what does this really mean is, the primitive data types you have, right? The type like the int, you float or double, you cannot use it to name a package. Also, all the reserved keywords in Java, you cannot use it to, to name the package, like interfaces, class, anything that sort of, right? So I'm going to name this as Boolean Demo. And inside this Boolean Demo, I'm going to create a new Java class file, which will be, I'll name it as Boolean Demo. So once you do that, I have created a class here as a public class with a Boolean Demo. And if you notice here, the package where this class resides is com.java.boolean demo. right? So this is basically like an identifier about where this compilation unit is located. So what I'm going to do is, without wasting time, I'm going to create a main method, public static void main, and I'm going to have that string args here, and this is my main method, right? And this is where I'm going to write all my code. So as we have seen that to define a Boolean, we need to use a keyword of Boolean with an identifier of flag, and I'm going to initialize the Boolean flag with a literal of false. And not to remember, you should always have a semicolon once you define an expression. So let's print this up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to print this Boolean flag, print a line with this flag. So when I run this code, right? So to run this code, I will click on this green play icon and run Boolean Demo. This will build and compile your code, and you will have your output as the Boolean value as false, right? So let's say that you are writing some logic, and at some point you need to check whether the condition is true. Then only you execute it, else you don't execute it, right? And you need to write that code, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a condition here, right? So to have a condition, there is this control statement, which is if. We call this as if loop, and inside this if and this parenthesis, I'm going to have if flag. What does this really mean is, if flag is true, right? If flag is true, then write this system.out.println. I'm going to have flag is flag, right? And if the flag is true, right, then print this statement. Else you do flag is false, right? So what I'm going to do is, to simplify this, I'm going to write this as flag is false, and here I'm going to write the flag is true, and I'm going to again refactor this here. So if you notice here, what does this condition will do is, if flag, if you just type this flag, in case of Boolean, if you type just the variable name, it checks whether this flag variable value is true. If it is true, then execute this block, right? Execute this block. Else, execute the else block, right? So to make sense, I'm going to again run this code. As I run this code, the output should be the flag is false, right? Let's try to make this flag as true. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make this flag as true, and when I run this code here again, and this will have me an output as flag is true. So this is how you define a Boolean, and this is how you use a Boolean. In the next tutorial, we are going to see the new data type, and we are also going to see the demo for that new data type. Till then, goodbye. See you in next tutorial.